And I should say we'll try to get through, there's lots of questions, which is wonderful. And so if you could try and keep them succinct and brief, that would be marvelous so that we can get through as many as possible.
Thank you, Hannah. Thank you, Dr. Maté. I wondered, and I'm not sure if you're prepared to answer this, but I wondered what method you used to recover from your own self-confessed addiction, if you used a 12-step program, or if you care to share that.
Yes.
I attended a 12-step group once or twice, but I didn't have the discipline to keep going. What method? I don't know that there's one method, but it was really, now look, by the way, it was 2 years ago this June that I was in London speaking to a lot of people, including to the Haru Academy. And my wife was with me. And this work that the shopping addiction I've got over years ago, but the work addiction, 2 years ago I was in London and I was giving these talks and I was being my usual, I like to think articulate and intuitive and communicative self on stage. But back in the hotel room with my wife, I was irritated because I was working too much. I'd taken on too much. And my wife said to me, listen, friend, you've written a book called When the Body Says No. Well, you better write one called When the Wife Says No. I'm not putting you up with this anymore. I will not have my holidays ruined because you're a workaholic. So partly it had to do with, do I want to honor my relationship? In fact, to stay in it. So I had some incentive after 49 years at that point of marriage. And, but really it's been a process of deepening my awareness of myself, of separating from my ego. And that meant for me, counseling, deep reading, self-reflection, yoga, taking care of my body physically and nutritionally, all that. Each of my books that I've written have been for myself. So the more I immersed myself in this material, the clearer I became within myself. There's no simple answer I can give you. I can also tell you that I've also done some really helpful work with traditional healing methods, including psychedelic substances, and that's also helped. I can't point to one thing that has been the key. It's all of that. But fundamentally what it was is I've had a deep commitment. I can acknowledge myself for that. Sometimes I had to drag myself kicking and screaming, but I had a deep commitment to transformation and to self-awareness.
Should jump in at that moment and say I think one of the experiences could have been with a guest we have coming up on the How To Academy program on March the 24th, the Temple of Life.
Oh yeah, the Temple of the Way of Light.
Temple of the Way of Life.
Yeah, that's in Peru, and it's an ayahuasca healing center with Matthew Waterston, and a good friend of mine. And yes, I had a deep experience there 2 years ago that I'll tell you about in some other context.
Well, we hope.
In fact, I went to the Temple of the Way of Light right from London under the circumstances I just mentioned. And when I got there, the shaman said, buddy, you can't lead anybody else. You're too stressed yourself. You better just work on you. That's what happened. These traditional healers read me like a book. They didn't know a thing about me. Matthew is free to talk about that if he wants to.
Hi, thank you so much, Dr. Maté. I am an MD, and your work has influenced my practice, and I was working as a medical school professor as well, and would turn all my students onto your videos and books. My question is personal. I struggle with an immense amount of dissociation, and I think I have maybe become involuntarily addicted to the endogenous opioids in my brain, and I feel very disconnected from myself, and I do use psychedelics also, but I still find myself kind of struggling to connect with the self all the time because of this dissociation. And I was wondering if you have any ideas on how to break it.
Well, yes. So the first question is, why would anybody dissociate? Not that you do it, by the way. You don't dissociate. Your brain does it automatically. I mean, do you decide, Miriam, do you decide all of a sudden, I'm going to dissociate now?
Not at all. That's one of the most frustrating things, is that it just happens so automatically.
Okay, no. No, don't think about yourself. Well, why would any human being, why would any human organism do that?
Yeah, I guess it's just overwhelm. It's a response to just not being able to cope with whatever's in front of you.
Exactly. And its origins are always in childhood, when the brain is developing. So that, like for example, my ADHD, my tuning out, which is a milder form of dissociation, was a response to circumstances that as an infant I couldn't handle. So that the brain tunes out as a way of defending itself from the overwhelming stress. And it's doing so when the brain is developing and all the circuits are being laid down. So the tuning out, the dissociation, actually becomes wired in. And later on, it takes very little to trigger it. So what I would invite you to do is to send me an email, and I'm giving How To Academy permission to share my personal email with you. This is professional courtesy here. And if you want to write to me, I'll get back to you. I won't take the time, nor do we have it, for me to delve into this question with you. But in recompense for you recommending my books to your students, I'll see what I can do to get back to you. Is that fair enough?
That's an absolute honor. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Without sounding rude, again, if I could emphasize, if you could keep a question brief so that I can get through as many as possible. Thank you so much.
I just wanted to ask, I've come to recognize my deep sensitivity as well as in my family through my healing of trauma and coming into authenticity. So I was curious what you recommend to prevent trauma when deeply sensitive.
Well, you know, it's a bit like asking, how do you prevent trauma when deeply black in a racist society? Because this society does not honor vulnerability. In fact, it kind of shuns it. You're being weak. How many times have you been told, don't be so sensitive? You might as well have been told, now what color are you? Are you a brunette or are you blonde? And I can't quite tell.
British, die, but I have green eyes.
Okay, well people might as well tell you, don't be so green-eyed. It's just your nature. Now, nobody ever told you not to be green-eyed, but they told you not to be sensitive, which is as much part of your nature as the green eyes are. So in this society, sensitive people are hurt. Now, how do you prevent it? Is if the parents had the wherewithal and the awareness and the teachers to recognize sensitivity and to actually honor it and to cherish it, because in traditional societies, the sensitive people were the shamans, they were the healers.